Hey everyone. So this is going to be take like 37 of what is going to hopefully be our inaugural Snakes on My Brain kind of solo podcast. Only again, hopefully less incel-y. Um, this is going to be essentially just me for 15 to 20, 25 minutes talking about different stuff related to reptiles, the hobby, things going on that just kind of get stuck in my brain because I'm a lot better at the long format versus the shorter stuff. It's taken about 2 years with consistency of really trying to get down to a smaller format for things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and just more easily digestible bits. But I'm definitely better at the long format stuff, which is why we started up Keep Comments Just a Snake podcast. So that's what this is going to be, either a separate one or just kind of like a tidbit of that. So with that out of the way, let's get into the topic of what is, again, hopefully going to be the first episode. And that is essentially how, as keepers and hobbyists and breeders, how do we present ourselves online? And I've talked, tidbits of this throughout the years of the YouTube, my presence on YouTube. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I should always strive to do the best that I can for presenting for you guys. Always doing the most research as possible, as clear and consistent as possible, with as many visual aids as I can possibly. So it's at least easy to understand and fairly in-depth without going too into the technical jargon. However, I'm not the only person on the internet, right? There is a lot of good and a lot of bad reptile content out there. And, I have my own opinions about that, about some of the more controversial stuff, with like rat keeping and breeding and venomous and feeding live and all that other stuff. That I imagine by this point, if you've watched for any amount of time, you probably know where I stand on a lot of those topics. But as the world keeps moving forward, the internet's forever. And that's something that a lot of my other counterparts, as well as people that I learned a lot from who've been on the internet for over 20 years at this point, is something that they really instilled in me. And so that's why, I have this backlog of, at this point, combined between shorts and regular videos, over 500 videos over the course of now 4 years. Thinking that people would watch a lot of that backlog and see me grow, not only in consistency, but in effort, in me making mistakes, in me changing and growing, as well as it looking better and presenting better. But that's not exactly how most people consume content on the internet. Not just for reptiles trying to learn stuff, but just to watch stuff. That's not how they consume it. They take it in little bites at a time, and even some of this more long form stuff. And so me having this catalog of close to half a decade of several hundred videos, people, when they first come across my website or first come across YouTube or whatever, and they see a more popular video that's several years old and the information or the video is not very good, that may not be the best thing to have. And so my original thought on this, I think 2 years ago, was, hey, I bought into the, very prevailing, very pervasive at the time, information about keeping different species of reptiles, about a new product that's hit the market that after a little bit more research done, not even just by the common keeper, but by the people who actually look into the manufacturing of said products, are detrimental to your reptile's health. And so I kept those videos on the channel and then would allude to it, mention it, call myself out on it, to where I was wrong, where I wasn't housing this particular reptile correctly, or this particular substrate, or this particular product weren't the best. And I've criticized other keepers out there before, other content creators, for deleting their old stuff, deleting stuff that made them look bad, and then never addressing it. And so that's why I've left it all on the channel. But now, after it was like 5 or 6 comments on 2 videos in particular. One was the main one was an old one where my reverse trio of African fat-tailed geckos. I incorrectly housed them in a 20-gallon, and yeah, I know breeders will keep them in less floor space and yada, yada, yada. But I'm trying to present the best keeping practices and ideas, or at least a consensus of things for the more pet keeper, not necessarily for breeders. And so a lot of comments were saying that I was going to end up with dead geckos and how horrible I am. And they weren't all wrong to say that. They really weren't. And I've talked about it before when it came up a couple different times in the past about how, I've changed then, linking the 2 videos since then about upgrading them. And it's not just them, the MBK was on crushed walnut and stuff like that. But I really kind of came to the conclusion that now that we're starting to get into the several thousands of subscribers, and hopefully it does continue to grow, that people aren't going to just regiment themselves for over the course of 4 or 5 days to watch the hundreds of hours of shorts, of podcasts, and of videos, and pay attention over the course of essentially the start of the pandemic to now. So I've decided that I'm going to start taking away some of those older, not great videos that, yeah, I'm still a person. I'll still admit to when I'm wrong. It's not the first time I pulled content either. One time I said that veiled chameleons are from Madagascar, and that was just any credibility that I had went away immediately. And this kind of follows along that same logic to where if I'm trying to present myself as any sort of authority of any degree, and I show what is now very obvious bad keeping practices, any authority or really any chance of people wanting to actually listen to what I'm saying kind of immediately takes a big nosedive. And they're kind of right to do so in quite a few regards. So I'm going to start to go back and look over a lot of the older content and maybe get rid of those and maybe make more updated videos as I go along. As of right now, I think I'm going to keep that 10-gallon baby ball python video that I did for one good reason, though. I made that video after I helped a friend of mine on their grand opening of a brick-and-mortar reptile store. I was just helping him out, didn't get paid at all. I was just kind of helping direct people, answer questions, get stuff together, because I, even then, was a fairly well-known person in the Denver area for reptiles. It's kind of expanded out a bit then. But the vast majority of people wanted ball pythons as their first pet, or getting a ball python as their next one. And yeah, that still goes on today too. But so many people, that was what they had, was a 10-gallon or a different size enclosure that was not even a full 20-gallon in length, not even a full 30 inches long, but like a 10-gallon-ish in floor space. And that's what so many, I'm talking in the high double digits of people that I helped over the course of 4 hours. That's what they had. It was really happening, grand opening too. And that's where I kind of came to this, and I was trying to help people okay, so, and they would see videos online of breeders, Brian Barczyk and other people like that, to where, their babies were housed in small tubs. And as a hobby breeder myself, my babies are kept in smaller than 10-gallon tubs, but I'm a breeder, not a pet keeper. And so I was, trying to do the whole rigmarole of okay, you can start this, but you got to go that and go that and go that, and all that jazz, right? And so that's why I decided to make that video, which was to say, you've already decided you're going to get this pet snake. No amount of me or anybody else preaching online about how that's not okay, or you're a bad person for doing that. You've already decided that in your mind. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily a bad person. It's just what you've seen and you're emulating it, right? And which is kind of the whole point of this video, / podcast, whatever. So let me see if I can make a way to do it that's at least a couple steps up versus reptile, carpet, a hide, and a bowl. And so, it's a 10-gallon tank, but there's a layer of substrate. There's a pad on one side. There's a water dish. There's 2 or 3 hides. There's a climbing branch. So while it's not the largest enclosure out there, or even one at the time and definitely now that I would ever recommend as a minimum size for a baby established ball python, 20 gallons I think is a good minimum for a pet keeper for a baby, like under a year or two old. But that's what everyone was doing. So I said, if you've already decided this is what it is, this is what I have, this is my start, here's a way that you could do it a little bit better. And so that's the reason why I made that video. And that's why I had some of the older videos I'm going to still probably keep on there, which is as a new keeper coming in, this is something that hopefully could be a little step up there. Reptile keeping is, it's been around for, this point 2 or 3 decades in a high volume, more public aspect, but it's still a relatively new hobby as compared to like most sports. And so everything is still growing, everything is still changing. Like I said, I admit that I even made mistakes where I caved into the dogma to a fair degree of, the brick and mortar out of a box setup kit type things, and that's also why I said that I'm never going to do just care sheets, because there's no one solid universal way to do that. And so if a person's already in it, they've already made that plunge, let's baby step them to better keeping practices. And that was the point of that. And that's the point of a lot of the videos. And so I think that's essentially what it is. Essentially, this is me saying what has been going on, what you're going to see, why it's still like that. And then hopefully maybe you can kind of take that sort of mentality and compare it to, which I know it sucks. It doesn't sound very great when you say compare people. But you do want to compare information. Level-headed, science-based, essentially, I don't like to use this word, but essentially nonpartisan, so not one way or the other, information is good to have, and you get a lot of those types of sources. I'm not a biologist, I'm not a herpetologist, I don't have an advanced degree, I'm just a guy who really likes snakes, who was a keeper first, a breeder second, and now an educator third, and those are constantly changing places. And now essentially I'm a rancher as well. And you want to get your information from a lot of these different places, and you want to pay attention to how and why they present information the way they do. And this could technically be translated to other aspects of life, not just about reptile keeping. Hand gestures. I know a lot of people are mad about my hand gestures, but I don't really care. Apologies for audio listeners, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to throw this out as an audio podcast. But that is essentially what today's topic is that it's the reasons why I am presenting the way I do online is for the benefit of people. And while I think it's good to show human growth, to show the advancement of those keeping practices, I think there are some times where older or bad information that, despite your best intentions, really shouldn't be there if you're trying to have some sort of motivation behind it or trying to present a certain way, where your credibility really gets kind of thrown into question quite a bit if you are trying to present yourself as such. And so for the people out there listening, or that consume a lot of this content, that were referred to me or referred to this podcast, or heck, I see a lot of people talking about how they want to start their own podcast, TikTok, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Have that in mind, to where be very aware of how you are presenting. That comes across in such fine details that you really don't think about it. And be okay with admitting that you were wrong about things and evolving, changing, and bettering yourself moving forward. So hopefully you got something out of this podcast. This is inaugural one. And we're going to put out 2 or 3 subsequently in the next couple weeks. And we're going to see how you guys enjoy that. And then maybe we'll try to continue with a fair amount of consistency and regular updates this way. I know a lot of people like it when I'm talking to another person. I personally enjoy podcasts where there are 2 or 3 people talking, where you're getting more than just one person straight talking to the camera. But I know a lot of people also have enjoyed my solo podcast as well, that people would like to hear certain individuals' opinions about things, even outside of the context of a regular dialogue. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this. Stay tuned for more episodes. And yeah, hope you're having a great day. We'll check you next time.